Hi, this is Dr. Chrissy Taylor, and I'm coming to you very informally because I wanted to do a reflection on my final project for leading learning. This has really been a great class, and we talked a lot about what happens in the classroom with teachers, but my specialty is working with teachers to help them really focus on how they learn. So, in module three, where we really started talking about the process of adult learners, that's where I specialize in because that's what I do on a daily basis is work with adult learners. Now, part of my project really started to focus on this transition that we had at Palm Beach State College when we transitioned what was called our Center for Professional Teaching and Learning to now the Center for Teaching, Learning, and Excellence. It's called the CTLE. And so I just want to kind of give a brief overview of, my project. And I also wanted to kind of talk about like what I've learned from the projects that I've done. I kind of did a cross between the Leading for Excellence and Equity course that I'm taking, as well as this, because we've had so much happen. So I had to try to combine those resources to make this as effective as possible. So whereas one project really focused on how do we mentor minorities through the continuing contract process, this particular project combines some of that literature, but I'm looking more so just at how adults learn in general. So you'll see quite a bit of information in here on change management and supporting adults through the learning process and the impact of this CTLE type of model. And so I really just want to kind of read this quote from University of Michigan in their mentoring process. It says that it helps to improve acclimation to work environments. A faculty mentoring model leads to better quality teaching. It enriches researchers' skills and productivity. It improves informed choices regarding service activities and increases collaboration. And in higher education, that's kind of really one of the things that we're really missing because most of us as professors work in silos. So during the course of me taking these courses, I've had an opportunity to transition from an intern position as a dean back to the classroom, and then of course, we're dealing with this COVID outbreak. So, how do we make this all mash together and work? All of the research that I've been able to pull is consistent with exactly what the University of Michigan model is. And one thing that I can, in my assessment and review of, I kind of did a SWOT analysis based on the research of Palm Beach State College new CTLE model. And I'll put a little tidbit in the final project compared to the old model, which really, it would really be one slide because the old model was just, hey, we have some resources available, and then we had these classrooms. We had a room dedicated on each campus to where we would go, and you can make copies. It was just kind of like a work room, and then we would hold events in there from time to time, and I could say, hey, I have an idea, I want to do a presentation, but there was no formal way of managing that process. You didn't receive credit for professional development. If I wanted to do a presentation, then I would work with my PTLC mentor on the director on the campus. I would just do the presentation, and hey, we would come out to support each other. But now the process is more formalized through our PTLE, because if you want to do a presentation, then you need to go through the PTLE, and then they'll make sure that they work with HR so people can receive proper credit for it. And then it also is kind of thematic. So there's nothing stopping faculty members from still doing a presentation. We can always do that. Very informal process. But if you want it to be more formal, then you organize it through the PTLE, and you make sure that it aligns with their those 6 pillars of excellence, which I'm going to quickly read through because I've rather enjoyed learning about those. But all of the topics that we try to address, the focus is on that pillar of excellence model. And those 6 pillars include how we manage, assess, know, engage, include, and thrive, and how we go about supporting our faculty members. And I remember even as an interim dean, how I went through the process of ensuring that as I mentored faculty members, that I was able to try to look at each of those pillars, and I assessed them, and I provided them with coaching and mentorship based on each of the pillars, how they manage the classroom, how I manage them and mentor them as a leader, the assessment process that they use in the classroom. So the assessment is create and employ effective lessons and assessments. And that is something that is always missing from the collegiate experience, because we come in as subject matter experts and we are not necessarily trained in pedagogy. And you might have that nuance where you have a education professional who has had this targeted background, but most of the time we have to be trained on this process. Luckily for me, before I went into education, I worked for the Air Force as an instructor, so I was trained in instructional technology, as well as I was a K through 4 educator for a few years. So I already had a teaching background and I already understood pedagogy. But even this class has re-emphasized that adult pedagogy is a little bit different. The great thing about teaching at a higher learning institution is that when you talk about adult pedagogy, which you'll see some of the pieces of research that I reviewed here for this, a lot of it was I was able to incorporate some of the stuff that I first wrote into this presentation, but I also incorporated several things for like how CTLs work, as well as application of adult learning into this. But the great thing about being able to teach at a college is that it's almost experiential, because as soon as we learn these concepts for adult learning, we go apply this to the class because we're teaching adults. So I really think that is very an effective approach. Another thing I wanted to add to here is when I did a SWOT analysis, that I recognized that this RCTLE model is really it's new for us, but it's not new for other people. So some of the things that I'm mentioning here, we're going to have the opportunity to add. I really have enjoyed as a dean working with the CTLE. The one thing I would say that it was missing, but again, it's new, is that it didn't have all of the online training. And I wish that the CTLE was more engaged with the new faculty and adjuncts. But that is something that could come in the future. So I kind of put that as a opportunity for them to engage with adjuncts, because primarily the focus has been them working with faculty. I also can really appreciate that our CTLE was involved in the and I didn't go so in deep into this project with it, but I also really appreciate that they were involved in our the rework of our continuing contract process. The only problem with that is that they put a lot of evidence-based approaches into it, but it was from an administrative standpoint. So as a teacher, I can say this is a well thought out process. But from an administrative standpoint, I felt like the process to implement it was kind of rushed. So here we are, I'm working as an interim dean, and the process to implement this, hey, let's start this in January, and it left like no transition for those of faculty members who are at the 2 or 4 year mark, when we typically go through a process of 5 years. They were already in a cycle utilizing a whole different system. There was really no transition process for that, and then all of a sudden we get hit with this COVID thing. So that'll be really interesting. But I think one positive that can come out of this from the standpoint of helping us to transition to be online, there's been a lot of debate at my school about, well, can faculty members work from home? Can we provide professional development opportunities that are meaningful through an online experience? And I think that the COVID outbreak is going to require us to make that transition. So I'm thinking that in the future that our CTLE will begin to develop those processes. And I would love to see our CTLE work more collaboratively with the HR department, because I think that faculty members often lead the initiatives when it comes to like developing culturally competent type education programs, and they would be really great to support HR in actually training some of the administrators. So I'm going to say this from an administrator standpoint. Part of the problem that we've had too with our continuing contract is minorities, and I addressed that in another project, because a lot of our minority faculty members are not achieving continuing contract. But the issue here is that we not only needed to look at how we were improving and applying professional development and working through their process institutionally and systematically, we need to address that disparity, right? But a big part of that was that, just from my observation, is we not only needed a targeted program to address it systems wide, but we needed to provide some training, leadership, and cultural competence training for supervisors. Because as a minority myself, I can speak from the standpoint that people may not always feel comfortable approaching their supervisor when they need help with something. And the CTLE is a great option, but you also have to make sure that if you're going to do a referral to the CTLE, that employees don't look at that as if it's punitive anyway. So the administration has done well to try to create that environment, and we want to keep it that way, but they really need to implement some type of training for administrators on culturally competent models for supporting their faculty members through the professional development process. So when we talk about an action plan and where this really should go next, I think that our CTLE is on the right track. Some of the pitfalls that they're going to face is that is again the haste by the administration, not the CTLE team, to implement a model for continuing contract that didn't really consider all aspects of what was really needed. They might face some pushback from administrators who feel that if faculty members were referred, there should be a process in place where they know that some work was actively done to support that faculty member, because otherwise it could become punitive on the faculty member in a political way. But I think that overall, just my assessment and being able to work with Matt and to work with my 2 faculty leads over the past year with this model is going to be really effective. I think a lot of work went into developing this CTL model, and when you look at the research and the layout that I've put in the initial presentation, you'll see that it's all evidence-based. Okay, it's all evidence-based. So going forward, again, what I would really like to see in terms of action steps or next steps is to really figure out a way for them to demonstrate some results of what they're doing, but this is all new, and be able to translate that information to supervisors so that we can know, that these faculty members are being properly supported or getting what they need, because you don't want it to be punitive, but you also want to know that what's happening is effective. And 2, I think that the CTLE can provide some support to training administrators. It's not faculty focused, but they should have administrative focus, but I think that they should have some input, because faculty members are going to go there and share their perspective, and the CTLE can support HR by saying, hey, this is what faculty members are needing from supervisors. I think that without that link, it's going to be a little bit harder for this to be sustainable. And I also wanted to just re-emphasize the importance of change management models, that the college does a great job of allowing faculty to explore processes, but then the administrative leadership team rushes certain aspects of it. And, there has to be consistency in whatever process that we follow. If we have a well-researched process for the development phase, there also has to be a well-researched process for implementing and getting feedback and engaging faculty. Otherwise, you're going to lose them. And I guess finally, I would say, even though I touched a little bit on this in relation to the other project, if one of our targets for the institution has been to, not only improve outcomes for minority faculty members, we got to focus on improving outcomes and establishing a point of excellence for all faculty members, because without some type of basis and consistency in what we're doing and clarity, any other initiatives that we launch are just going to kind of go with the wind. And this is kind of why we ended up in this situation in the first place, where we needed to redo our professional development model. And again, this whole COVID thing is requiring us to rethink how we approach the process. Can it be done digitally? How do we engage faculty members? How do we increase accountability? But I really think that those pillars of excellence and the criteria that was laid out under each one, in alignment with this new faculty continuing contract model, which I left information about that in these slides, because it's important that you understand the link between that, because it is going to increase accountability. I think that we're headed in the right direction. And, my goal is really to support the process, to continue to engage as both a faculty member and an administrator. But again, my role tends to vary based on any new assignments that they have. So right now I'm supporting it. I've supported it from an administrative standpoint, but now, I really want to support that piece from the faculty standpoint. But my goal really would be to work with the CTLE and HR as a bridge to say, hey, I've kind of been on both sides. Let's develop some cultural competency training for administrators where the faculty has input, and that will help to increase how we engage all faculty members. Thank you.